This is all you need to get started with digital painting in Procreate. I will guide you through all the basics while we create this awesome artwork. I will show you how to create a canvas, how to use alpha lock, clipping mask, how to fill areas with color or to create a gradient, how to use brushes, the smudge tool, and a lot more. So this is the perfect start for your Procreate journey. The first thing we'll do is create a canvas. When you are in the Procreate gallery, you can create a canvas by going to the plus here in the upper right corner. Now you'll see some standard canvas sizes that Procreate has already come up with, but you can also create your own custom size by tapping this little folder with a plus. And here you can set the width, which we will set to 2300 pixels, and the height, we will set that to 3000 pixels. Now you can leave the DPI, and here you'll see the maximum amount of layers that you can use, and this number might differ from what I have here because it all depends on the type of iPad you're using. So don't worry if your number is a bit lower than mine, that's all fine. Then go to the color profile. I like to set it to RGB and then to sRGB, a long code. And then finally you can change the name of your canvas so it's easier to find. It'll be like the standard canvases that Procreate has already put in the app. Your new canvas will be at the bottom of the list. So for instance, you could just call it 2300 by 3000 pixels. It's a size I often use in my tutorials. So if you're going to follow the other You Can Draw This video tutorials, then you're all set to go. Now tap Create. And there we have our canvas and we are ready to get started. Now one more thing you'll want to get before continuing is my color palette. When you tap the color, you can see the color palette over here. There is a link in the description so you can download it. So by downloading the color palette, you'll be able to use the exact same colors as I'm using during the tutorial. Now the first thing we'll do is we are going to drag this first color over here, just tap it. We are going to drag it onto our canvas. You can do that by just tapping and holding the color over here and dragging it onto your screen. Now we have filled our entire canvas, or actually our layer 1, with this blue color. Now let's go to the brush menu, that's the little brush icon here, and go to the airbrushing brushes, and then grab the soft brush. Now here on the left side you'll see two sliders. The top slider is for the size. You can move it down or up, and if you find a size that you like, you can actually save it by tapping this little plus here. Now I have it set to 25%, and here this bottom slider is for the opacity, and that means how transparent or opaque your brush stroke is. Let's set it to 60%, and again you can tap it and then tap the plus if you want to save this amount of opacity. Now tap the colored circle here in the upper right corner and grab the second color in the first row of the color palette. Now you can zoom out of your canvas a little bit by pinching your fingers, so we can make it a little bit smaller. And now we are going to glaze over the middle half a little bit and gently go up to create a little bit of a gradient. So make sure that you keep the top part, keep that blue. So a bit like this, and then we'll switch to the third color in the color palette. And let's make our brush a little bit smaller. Let's go for 15%. If you move it outwards, your slider will go a little bit slower. 15%, and then add some pink just underneath the halfway point of our canvas. Just like this, and it doesn't matter if you see your strokes, because we are going to blur it to create a nice smooth gradient. To do that, we need to go to this little magic wand here at the top and select Gaussian blur. Now here at the top you'll see Gaussian blur and the percentage. Now to adjust it, you need to slide. It's telling you over here, so you can drag your pen or your finger to the right on the screen. And then you can create this nice soft gradient. Let's set it to 45% in this case. And now we're going to the layer menu. And here you can see that we have layer 1 with this gradient. And you see a little plus here to create new layers on top of it. If you tap the plus, you'll see this new layer and it's still completely transparent. So we have a layer that is completely filled and a transparent layer. You can compare it to like a transparent sheet of paper. And that's what we are going to draw on right now. And we are going to grab a different brush under calligraphy, and that's the monoline brush. And then we'll go to the colors and we are going to use this first color in the second row. Now the opacity of this brush is set to 100% and the size is set to 10%. And now we are going to create a wobbly line from left to right. And it's going through that pink area that we have created with our gradient. So let's start about here and just make a wobbly line, which shouldn't be too hard. And just wobble your way from left to right, imagining you are creating these hill-like shapes, like mountains, mountain range, all the way to the right. And now we are going to fill it, just like we filled the entire page at the beginning. Now we are going to fill this shape. Now sometimes when you drag in the color, it happens that either the paint spills all over the page or you get like a little transparent edge just around the edge, as if the paint isn't filling the entire object. And to be able to adjust that, you need to fill the color on your screen and then hold it and drag to the right or left. You can see color drop threshold there. You need to go all the way to the right just until it just barely doesn't spill all over. That's when you have that sweet spot. Now we're going to create another layer. So go to the layer menu, these two little squares, and tap the plus. And then go to the next color. That's the second color in the second row. And now start a little bit lower and make another wobbly line. So this is a great practice if you want to improve your wobbliness, your wobbly lines. All the way to the right, and then just drag in the color to fill that shape. Then create another layer. So go to the layer menu, tap the plus. Go to the next color and again make a wobbly line. Over here you can go a little bit higher than our previous mountain range. Just go all the way to the right, wobble along until you are here, and then drag the color inside the shape. Then the next one, go to the layer menu again, tap the plus, grab the next color, that's the fourth color. And again, start a little bit lower and wobble along to the right side. Here you can go a little bit higher. Just wobble to the right and drag and drop the color. Then go to the layer menu, tap the plus again. Then we'll go to the fifth color in the second row. We're almost there. Start a little bit lower again. And we'll wobble along all the way to the right. Drag and drop the color. Then go to the layer menu again, tap the plus. Then grab the last color, the sixth color in the second row. Start a bit lower again. You can barely see it. I wonder if you can see it on screen. But we're making a wobbly line here. And just wobble to the right and drag and drop the color. Now let's say you feel like your mountains or your hills are a little bit too high up. When you're working digitally, it's easy to adjust things. We can just go to the layer menu and select all these layers with hills. You can do that by sliding to the right, selecting all of them, just not the background layer with the gradient. Then you can go to the move tool, that's the little arrow up here. Then make sure you have snapping turned on over here. And now you can drag it down a little bit. And just make sure you keep seeing that orange line. So you know that you are in the center. Otherwise, you will get a little gap on the right or left. And once you're happy with the placement, you can just tap the little arrow to get out of the menu again. Now we are going to add a little like fog on our mountains. This will help to separate them a little bit. Now before we do that, First, let's tap layer 2. Those are the mountains or hills in the back. We are going to turn on alpha lock on this layer. You need to tap the layer, then tap alpha lock, and you'll see a little checkerboard pattern appear around our shape. Now, whatever was still transparent on our transparent sheet of paper is now locked. We won't be able to paint there anymore. We can only paint on our hill. And that's really super handy if you don't want to go outside of the shape accidentally. Now we're going back to the airbrush, to that soft brush we used before. And for our color, we are going to use this third color in the first row. Now the opacity is still at 60% and the size is at 15%. And now we're going to glaze over that bottom area here, just to add a little bit of mist there. And we are going to do the same thing for the other hill. So first go to layer 3. Make sure you don't go outside of the shape by turning on alpha lock. And just to demonstrate, if I paint here, nothing happens. But if I paint on the mountains, something does happen. Now, if you have made a mistake like this, you can easily undo it by either tapping here on this little arrow or tapping with 2 fingers on the screen. So let's try again. Let's just go over that lower area and add a very gentle little mist. Let's do the same for the next area. Layer 4, turn on alpha lock. And then glaze over that lower area. Then we'll move on to the next one. Layer 5, again tap the layer, turn on alpha lock. And glaze over the lower area. That's where the mist is. And the final one, we won't be going over layer 7, only over layer 6. Tap it, turn on alpha lock, and then add just a little bit of mist. I'm using very little pressure here on my pen. There are brushes in Procreate that behave differently if you press hard or light on your pen. And of course, this only works if you have a pressure sensitive pen. It doesn't work with your finger. So with some brushes, they become more opaque if you press harder, or the other way around, or some brushes, the stroke becomes thicker or bigger when you press harder. So having a pressure sensitive pen really is worth it. Now what our landscape needs is a moon. We are going to put it on a separate layer. So first let's go all the way to the top, select layer 7, then tap the plus for a new layer, and let's go back to the monoline brush. It is under calligraphy. And for the color, let's grab this first color in the third row. Now we are going to draw a circle, which can be quite challenging in real life to draw a perfect circle. But in Procreate, it's really easy. All you have to do is make a shape that looks like a circle. Then hold your pen in place to make it snap to a quick shape. Here at the top, you can see an ellipse is created. Now if you put a finger on your screen, it'll snap to a perfectly round circle. And if you let go, you have your circle. You could even go to edit shaper at the top and you can use these handles to change the shape. This also works for triangles, rectangles, for lines actually. So this is a super handy tool. Now let's fill our shape by just dragging in the color. And if you need, you can move it around by going to the arrow. We still have snapping turned on, so we can place it in the vertical center. Let's place it a little bit higher. And if you need to resize it, then make sure that you set it to uniform here. If you use freeform and you go like this, you'll get a little like egg shape. That's not what you want, so make sure you set it to uniform if you need to resize it. The next thing we'll do is add a little glow to our moon. Let's go to the layer menu and duplicate our moon. You can do that by sliding to the left and clicking duplicate. This is also the area where you can either delete your layer or lock it. That's handy if you have created a layer and you really don't want to touch it anymore. Then lock it and you won't be able to paint on it. Now let's duplicate it. Then go to the bottom layer and we are going to add a bloom effect. You can find it under the magic wand where you can find all adjustments. And it works the same as the Gaussian blur. So when you tap bloom, you'll see bloom and a percentage, and again you need to slide to the right with your pen or finger to increase the bloom. And it's nice for adding these nice lighting effects. Let's increase the size just a little bit. Let's say 43%. You can also increase the burn. I don't want it to be too burny. I think it looks good like this. Now let's go to the layer menu. I want to add some texture to our moon. First, let's tap layer 8. And when we add texture to the moon, we don't want our texture to show up outside of our moon. So you could go for alpha lock here, but you could also create a new layer on top by tapping the plus, tap that layer, and then turn on clipping mask. Now we paint on this layer that is clipped to our moon. Whatever we paint will only show up on our moon. Now let's grab a brush. We are going to the industrial brushes and use the rusted decay brush. And for our color, we are going to use the second color in the third row. I have the opacity set to 100% and the size is set to 14%. And now let's just tap a few times on our moon to get some texture. Now the difference with alpha lock is that we still have full control over this texture that we have added. If you go to the layer menu, you can tap the N over here and you get this opacity slider. So you can slide and make your texture more transparent. Let's say we go for 70%. And since this is on a separate layer, you can also manipulate that layer. So if you go to the arrow tool, the move tool, you can rotate that texture, you can move it around. So using clipping mask gives you a lot of freedom. It just costs you more layers. Now let's go and add some stars and I'll tell you about how you can manipulate brushes. Let's go to layer 1 where we have that gradient that we have created. Then let's go to the brush menu and go to the luminance brushes. Then select the glimmer brush. If you tap it again, it'll open the brush studio. And here you can see a lot of options, all the stuff you can adjust. In your brush, we are going to stroke path and we are going to turn up the spacing of our brush. So our stars will be a lot further apart. We'll also go to shape and turn up the scatter. Now they are all rotated a bit and there's more diversity even though it's hard to see. You can also change the color dynamics, for example. Here you can see that the hue, saturation, and lightness, they all vary a little bit when you make a stroke. If you don't like that, then you can turn it off here. Or if you want more color variation, then you can turn it up, of course. Now let's tap done. So we are ready to add some stars. For the color, we are going to use this blue, that third color in the third row. The opacity is set to max. And let's set the size to 18%. And now with this brush, the harder you press, the more stars, the brighter stars you get. Here if I press lightly or harder, they will become bigger and also brighter. So if you have a pressure sensitive pen, keep that in mind and vary your strokes. So try to press harder in some areas and a bit lighter in others to get a nice variation of stars. And add more stars to the top area and less to the lower area because it's lighter there, so you wouldn't be able to see that many stars there. Now finally, let's add some shooting stars as well. We will create a new layer for that again, so tap the plus for a new layer. And for our brush, we are going to use the light brush. Keep it set to that blue, opacity to 100%, and the size at 5. Now let's add a little bright dot over here and another one over here. These will be our shooting stars. Now to give them a nice tail, we are going to use the smudge tool. And you can see the smudge tool here at the top. It's the little finger right next to the eraser. And if you tap it and check it, you can see that you can use any type of brush as a smudge tool. And we are going to use the light brush that we also use to create these little stars. I have the opacity set to 100% and the size is at 9%. And I'll just gently stroke outward and drag that color to create this little tail. Make sure they both go in the same direction. And there you have two nice shooting stars. If you feel they are a little bit too bright, then you can just go to the layer menu, tap the little N again, and lower the opacity. Of course, you'll need to see them, so drag your canvas around, and you can make them a little bit less bright. For instance, 90%. Now, if you want to view your artwork without all the menus visible, then you can just tap 4 fingers on the screen to admire what you have just created. Congratulations on what's possibly your first work in Procreate. Let me know in the comments if this is. Now finally, we just want to export our artwork to show it to the world, of course, but before we do that, don't forget to hit that thumbs up if you have enjoyed this video, subscribe if you want to see more. And that's not just for future videos, because if you want more, I actually have over 100 You Can Draw This video tutorials, in which I always take you through all the steps. And once you're done with those, you can come and join the community at Patreon and follow even more Procreate tutorials. So there's still a lot to do. But now let's export our work. Just tap with 4 fingers again, so you can go to the menu. If you want to export your work, you can go to the wrench, then to share, and here you can pick how you want to share your work. Whenever I share a work, I usually share it as a JPEG, so you can tap JPEG, and then you can decide how you want to share it. What I usually do is save it to my Google Drive, or if I want to send it to someone, I just pick Gmail and send it through email. But of course, you can also just save your image on your device. It'll be on your iPad in your image gallery, ready to do with it whatever you please. Now this is it. You have done it. Congratulations. I hope you have enjoyed following this tutorial, and I'm hoping to see you next time for the next tutorial.